Warspite! Yay! It's the Imperieuse Class, which is always a fun group to talk about because they really are quite insane. They really are. They have such wonderful things as compound armor, for starters. And, well, they're really quite cool ships. So, this will today take me to the 10th of September, and I'm probably not going to get recorded before I go anymore. So I'll probably do the rest while I'm traveling. Life happens this way. But this means you're going to get a range of backgrounds and a range of sound qualities. So I do apologize in advance for Safax, Duke de Costa class, Edgar class, Columbia class, and Giffian. They're all going to be recorded while I'm wandering around. But the good news is, on the 11th of September, tomorrow, there is a live. Yes, there is going to be a live. I'm going to attempt to do a live. Lord help me. It'll probably fail something chronic, but I will be attempting to do a live. Who knows? It could even be fun. Right then. So, because the last 3 decades of the 19th century are not something to do spread out, they really aren't. Imperieuse, Warspite. They would suffer again from the same issue the General Admirals had and various other attempts at armoured cruisers did at the beginning, in that the armoured belt, which is put in to give them protection above the waterline, has a nasty habit of, when the ship's actually in the water, of going below the waterline. What can I say? Life is gloriously fun sometimes. But these particular ships were still full of absolute wonder in terms of their duties and what they carried out. They are a class of armoured cruisers which really do provide the Royal Navy with so much knowledge and so much experience. They're built by Portsmouth Dockyard and Chatham Dockyard, and there are 2 of them, Imperieuse and Warspite. They were designed and intended to be long-range ships. Layout was unusual at the time, basically being in a diamond losange arrangement. Big guns, boom, 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 and boom. So, and with smaller guns as the backup. Originally, they were supposed to actually carry 10 of the smaller secondary guns, but that was found to be too heavy. So they carried 6. And they did start off with a full sail arrangement, but thankfully, at some point, someone went, you know what, this really doesn't work for us. They were intended for long-range deployments on distant front stations, which is why they start out with the sails, and also why they were sheathed with wooden copper to prevent the marine growth on the hull. Someone had worked out that fitting copper onto a steel hull at this point did not create a good reaction. In fact, it's just not good. It's a form of galvanic corrosion takes place. Now, as the this is worst on iron hulls, and as the steel hulls get closer and closer towards stainless steel and have more of the various additives in them which make them stainless steel, things do get better, but it still needs to be treated properly. So, these ships have wood between the copper and the iron and the steel. They have a mixture of both. It's an interesting design. Let's put it this way. It's an interesting design. So, displacement, 8,400 tons. Length, 96 meters. Beams, 19 meters. Draft, 8.15 meters. 12 co-fired boilers supplying 2 3-cylinder inverted compound reciprocating engines to drive 2 shafts with 8,000 indicated horsepower for a top speed of 16 knots or a range of 6,500 nautical miles at 10 knots. Fairly good. Fairly reminiscent of another class which was built not that about the same time. Because these are built, well, they're laid down in 1881, launched in 1883, and completed in 1886. about the same time as the Leanders. Their armament: 4BL breech loading, 9.2 inch, 234mm Mark III guns mounted singularly. As said, diamond losange. Originally 10 had been planned, but it's only 6-inch guns are actually fitted. And you can see their line if you look at this design, you can see where they're placed. Interestingly enough, it does seem that those 6-inch guns on the side, the forward one moves around. So they can provide fire forward, which is useful. And the armor, well, I forgot to mention the 6 18-inch torpedo tubes. And that's quite a hefty firepower, let's be honest. That's going to mean you're going to have to think about them if you are something else, i.e., if you are a battleship. That's enough torpedoes that, whilst torpedoes have not reached the point they will do, that's still enough torpedoes that you're going to think, do I want to have an absolute battle with this ship? Because I'd rather have firepower with me. It's not enough to guarantee a win or provide a win against a battleship. It's enough to make a battleship think, there are other options which might be easier, so I'll make sure I bring numbers with me to win this one. Because again, the Royal Navy, would they happily exchange a large armoured cruiser for a battleship? Not happily, but they do it. If it knocks your battleship out, the odds are they have more battleships to begin with, and that means they're going to win the actual battle. And the thing is, if they do that for the sacrifice of an armoured cruiser, then you haven't affected their battle line. Armour is compound armour. Waterline belt, due to being overweight, as said, this spends most of the time below the waterline, not above it, is 10 inches thick. Bulkheads, 9 inches. Barbettes, 8 inches. Decks between 2 and 4 inches. Gun shields, 2 inches. And conning tower, 9 inches. So, in effect, it becomes almost a protected cruiser, rather than an armoured cruiser, because the armoured deck is the important thing. Now, it's worthwhile thinking about compound armor because it's a rather interesting process, and it's rather critical in these ships and what comes afterwards. Compound armor is made from 2 different types of steel, and thankfully for the British, they actually start to make a lead in this. I know we talk about Harvey steel as armor, we talk about Krupp steel as armor, and we talk about the processes they develop. Well, early on, it's John Brown and it's Camel Lead. Basically, there's lots of issues with getting iron and steel to work together. They know they wanted the more elastic, low carbon wrought iron plate involved because that provides the ability to dissipate the energy, but they also want the high carbon steel front plate to provide the strength, even if it is brittle. And so they started trying to work out how to combine the two together. And the Italians even attempted welding, and that really didn't work out well. It really didn't. And so you have lots of people going away thinking about it. And 2 British processes come up with, at about roughly the same time, the idea of how to deal with it. A. Wilson of John Brown and Company comes up with the idea of to pour molten steel onto a wrought iron plate, and that for it to form that way. And Ellis of Camel Lead to position the 2 plates close together and pour molten steel into the gap. So you have 2 already made steel plates, an iron plate and a steel plate, and then you pour the molten steel into the gap, so that creates the bond. In both cases, the plate formed is subsequently rolled down to about half of the original thickness. The steel front surface usually forms about 1/3 of the thickness of the resulting armor plate. So it's a 1 to 2/3 ratio. Always good. And always nice. So Imperieuse, well, she has an interesting career. She is laid down in Portsmouth Royal Dockyard on 10th August 1881. She's launched on 18th December 1883. She's completed in September 1886, and she's sent to be the flagship of the China Station from 1889 to 1894 and the Pacific Station from 1896 to 1899. She then undergoes extensive repairs in Chatham in 1900. She's in February 1905 reclassed as Sapphire II to be a Poland depot ship for destroyers at Portland. Her name then reverts to Imperieuse in 1909, and she sold in 1913 to Foss W. Ward of Morecambe for breaking up. She had an interesting career, and this class is already featured in a couple of the previous videos being mentioned. Warspite, her sister. Now, Warspites have a bit of a history, okay? You either have a member of the class with that name who is, as ships go, almost completely insane, will go straight to, is definitely ruled by machine gods. I mean, full-on machine spirit, machine gods, Warhammer 40k. That's the only way to really sort of put it in the description. Or they have a relatively benign life where their mere name causes peace wherever they go. So she was on the Pacific Station between 1890 and 1993, then port guard ship at Queenstown until 1896. Then she goes back to 1902 to serve as the flagship of the Pacific Station again. This point is under a guy called Captain Thomas Philip Walker, who was appointed commander in March 1899, and Rear Admiral Henry Palliser was, of course, the commander-in-chief of the station at the time. In June 1899, he has his post taken over, i.e. Henry Palliser's post is taken over by Lewis Beaumont, another Rear Admiral, who keeps Captain Walker as his flag captain. Visits Kokimo in March 1900, and from late 1900, she's then the flagship of Rear Admiral Andrew Bickford, with Captain Colin Richard Keble as flag captain in command. In March 1902, Bickford transfers to the newly arrived HMS Grafton and takes Keppel with him. Grafton, of course, is an Edgar-class cruiser. And Warspite returns home under the command of Captain John Locke Marks, who had arrived on the Grafton. So this guy had got this brand new cruiser, brought it out, gone, and on the station, no, I want to retain my flag captain. Go home with the older cruiser. It was nice. On the way, she stopped at Bahia, Sao Vicente, and Cape Verde. Arriving in Plymouth in May 1902, paid off at Chatham in July, and was placed in D Division of the Dockyard Reserve and prepared for only emergency service. In 1904, she's told to Thomas W. Ward of Preston and arrives on the River Mersey in October 1905 before travelling on to Preston for breaking up. Interestingly enough, this illustration is not quite accurate. Or rather, it shows her as she was only ever on her trials. She only ever seems to have had her masts and sails on trials, if at all, because there are rumours, quite strong rumours, and definite evidence that she didn't have them removed. She didn't have them when she entered service, so they were removed when building. But she does seem to have been built with them as a part of her. This is actually how she appeared for most of her life, especially towards the end of her career. Single military mast and the sailing rig all removed. So, the Imperieuse Class. Good ships, bad ships. Well, I rather like them. I rather like both of them because they serve well and they give the Royal Navy definite capabilities. I also like the way they're laid out because I do like that kind of diamond gun formation. It's going to sound old-fashioned. I am not the biggest fan of wing turrets. This is the strange thing about me. I do not like a wing turret. Not on Dreadnought. I don't think it's sensible. But on the pre-dreads, I like it. if you were talking about me fitting secondary weapons on a coastal battleship, or fitting secondary armament on a cruiser, I'd probably adopt the diamond layout. Primary armament, I would normally, especially when Dreadnought comes along, be going, you either grip them all forward or you even out on both ends. You do not do the whole side armament thing. It's mainly because once you've got guns to that level, if you have them on sides, they cause so many issues. And wing turrets do cause so much issues at that point that they really cause more trouble than they're worth, especially when you consider their firing arcs. But when you're dealing with ships which are designed to fight close quarter battles, and let's be honest, pre-Dreadnought, pre-development of all the fire control systems, of all the speed and all the very large guns that come involved, they are designed to fight relatively close quarter battles. Having an all-round armament makes sense. It means that no matter where you are, there's always going to be a gun able to brought to bear, and the guns are not close enough, they're going to be easily disabled. You can't knock out, at this point, you can, no matter where you are in relation to this ship, 3 guns can bear on you. No matter where you are, 3 guns can bear on you. Yes, there are certain sections where it's going to be only 2 guns can hit you at that angle, but it's going to be a very easy maneuver to make sure I can bring 3 guns to bear on you. So I can bring 75% of my primary armament to bear on my opponent when I need to. That's an advantage. Saying that, they're very good for foreign stations. They are not, their armor belt, etc., probably precludes them from doing much in Europe. Although, again, it's an interesting thing, this class, because they're sailing around the world in 1898. They're sailing around when the Spanish-American War's going on. And they are exactly the sort of thing which Spain really should have had. And they are the sort of thing which actually, if the British had been going to intervene in the Spanish-American War, if they decided they wanted to actually support Spain, or rather were forced to support Spain because the other European powers were going to, and so they needed to do something, they would have got involved. And you would have had both Imperieuse and Warspite, if we think about their timelines. Warspite in 1898 is the flagship of the Pacific Station, and Imperieuse is serving on the Pacific Station between 1896 and 1898, not 1899. So is also there. They're both out there, and they're both together. So they could have been a terrible twosome. Which would have been an interesting scenario if you think about it. To have both these ships, and this is Imperieuse in her form similar to Warspite, to have both these ships fighting alongside each other would have certainly been a mighty force. What impact would they have had? Who knows? But saying that, and saying all that about them, they are quite possibly some of the most capable ships the Royal Navy built at the time, and this is with their problems. And they did cost somewhere in the region of £650,000 plus at the time, which is expensive, but not the massively expensive. They'll, of course, were succeeded by possibly my favourite cruisers of the armoured cruiser type, the Orlando class. And These vessels are, to an extent, the Orlandos are taking the ideas for the Mersey and the Leander type, adding in some of the knowledge and understanding gained in the Warspites, and producing what I consider some of the best armored cruisers produced in that period. They're just excellent vessels all around. And it's the same with the Imperieuse class. They are ships built on the cusp. The fact that they are originally fitted and designed for a brig sailing rig in order to economize on coal, only for when I'm actually trying to service them to the Royal Navy to realize, hang on, we have enough coal stations around the world now. We don't need to do this. We can get rid of them. Get rid of it. Go. These ships have 8,000 indicated horsepower. They are tremendously powerful warships, despite the fact they only have 60% of their 6-inch armament fitted. So what are we coming up? Well, this is the last one I'm recording at home. As I said earlier, this is the last video I'm recording at home. So the Duke de Costa is going to be recorded on my travels. The next in this series, the Suffolks, the Edgar class, the Columbia class, and the Geffian are all going to be recorded in my travels. So I hope you're going to enjoy those. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed. Thank you for all your support. And if there's any problems with the videos which are coming up, please note I will re-record them when I get home. Thank you very much, everyone. Take care, and thank you.